I'll destroy your life unless you date me. An obsessed CEO threatens a single dad, but when her shocking plan backfires in the most unexpected way, will their fragile lies turn into real love or tear an innocent family apart forever? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun filtered through the dusty windows of Parker's Hardware, casting warm squares of light across the worn wooden floor. Ethan Parker straightened a display of garden tools, listening to the familiar creak of the old building settling into another day. The brass bell above the door chimed as Mr. Jenkins, one of his regular customers, shuffled in. "Morning, Ethan. Got those pipe fittings I called about yesterday?" "Sure do, Joe." Ethan smiled, heading toward the plumbing aisle. "Set them aside just for you." Behind the counter, 8-year-old Lily sat on a tall stool, her legs swinging as she hunched over a piece of paper. Her brown pigtails bobbed with each stroke of her colored pencils. "Daddy, look! I drew our store!" Ethan paused to examine his daughter's artwork. The drawing showed their red brick building with stick figures of themselves standing out front. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Maybe we can hang it up right here behind the counter." Lily beamed, adding more details to her masterpiece. "Can I use the gold pencil for the door handle? It needs to be extra special." "Of course, princess." Ethan ruffled her hair before helping Mr. Jenkins find the exact fitting he needed. The morning passed peacefully, filled with the usual parade of familiar faces. Mrs. Wilson needed help choosing paint colors for her kitchen. The Rodriguez brothers came in for supplies to fix their grandmother's fence. This was the rhythm of small-town life that Ethan loved. Simple, predictable, meaningful. At precisely 11:47 a.m., that rhythm shattered. The bell chimed again, but this time it rang with an almost ominous tone. The click of expensive heels against hardwood announced her arrival before Ethan even looked up. A tall woman in a charcoal gray suit strode in, flanked by 2 younger assistants clutching tablets. Her presence seemed to suck all the warmth from the room. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her red lipstick matched her manicured nails perfectly. "Mr. Parker." Her voice was cool and precise. "I'm Vanessa Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Development Corporation." She didn't offer her hand to shake. Ethan straightened up from where he'd been helping young Tommy Miller pick out the right sandpaper. "Can I help you with something, Miss Caldwell?" "Indeed." She glanced around the store with barely concealed disdain. "I'd like to discuss a business proposition." Privately, Lily looked up from her drawing, her pencil forgotten in her hand as she watched the scene unfold. "Lily, honey," Ethan said gently, "would you mind going upstairs to get that inventory list from my desk?" "But Daddy." "Please, sweetie." Lily slid off her stool reluctantly, giving Vanessa and her assistants a curious look before disappearing through the door that led to their apartment above the store. Once she was gone, Vanessa's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched. "How quaint. You live above your shop. What can I do for you, Miss Caldwell?" Ethan kept his voice level, though something about this woman set him on edge. She gestured to one of her assistants, who produced a folder of documents. "I'll be direct, Mr. Parker. This location is perfect for our new luxury development project. We're prepared to offer you a very generous sum for your property." Ethan's heart dropped to his shoes, but he maintained his composure. "I'm sorry, but this store isn't for sale, Mr. Parker." Vanessa stepped closer, her expensive perfume filling the air between them. "Perhaps you don't understand. This entire block will be transformed. Progress is inevitable. Why not benefit from it? This store has been in my family for 3 generations, Ethan said firmly. "My grandfather built it. My father ran it for 40 years, and now it's where I'm raising my daughter. It's not just a property, it's our home." Vanessa's perfect lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. She turned to her assistants. "Wait in the car." They exited silently, leaving Ethan alone with this corporate predator. The morning sun caught the diamond pendant at her throat, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the wall. "Let me be clear," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I always get what I want. Always." She leaned in closer, close enough that Ethan could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "But I'm willing to make this interesting." "What do you mean?" Ethan took a step back, bumping into the counter. "Date me," she said simply, "or I'll destroy your life." The words hung in the air like smoke. Ethan stared at her, certain he must have misheard. "Excuse me?" "It's quite simple, really." Vanessa traced a perfectly manicured finger along the counter's edge. "My board of directors has been pressuring me to improve my public image. A relationship with a hard-working, widowed small business owner would be perfect for that. You agree to be seen with me at certain events, play along with my narrative, and I'll not only spare your precious store, I'll ensure it thrives. And if I refuse, her smile turned razor sharp, then I'll bury you in lawsuits. I'll buy every property around you. I'll make sure every supplier in a 100-mile radius blacklists you. How long do you think you'll last when your customers have to drive an hour to buy a box of nails? Ethan's mouth went dry. That's blackmail. That's business. Vanessa straightened her jacket. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. I'll send a car at 8. She turned on her heel and walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Parker? Don't bother trying to fight this. My lawyers are very, very good at what they do. The bell chimed one final time as she left, the sound now feeling like a death knell. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Ethan went through the motions, helping customers, restocking shelves, checking inventory, but his mind kept returning to Vanessa's impossible ultimatum. As the sun began to set, he locked up the store, his movements mechanical. Lily skipped ahead of him on the sidewalk, chattering about her day at school, blissfully unaware of the dark cloud hanging over their future. Across the street, a black luxury car idled, its tinted windows reflecting the orange glow of sunset. Ethan didn't need to see through those windows to know who was watching. He closed his eyes briefly, his lips moving in a silent prayer. Lord, give me strength, he whispered. Show me the way. When he opened his eyes, the car was still there, a silent reminder that tomorrow would bring decisions that could change everything. The sizzle of bacon filled the small kitchen as morning sunlight streamed through the window above the sink. Ethan Parker stood at the stove, mechanically flipping pancakes while his mind churned over yesterday's encounter. The threatening words from that CEO kept echoing in his head. Date me or I'll destroy your life. Daddy, you're burning the pancake! Lily's voice snapped him back to reality. Oh shoot! He quickly scraped the blackened circle off the griddle and into the trash. Running a hand through his hair, he poured fresh batter onto the hot surface. Lily sat at their small kitchen table, her legs swinging beneath her chair as she colored in her favorite princess coloring book. Her brown pigtails bounced with each movement, secured by the sparkly hair ties she insisted on wearing every day. The bacon's extra crispy today, she observed, nibbling on a piece. And you haven't smiled all morning. Ethan tried to force a cheerful expression. Just thinking about grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Is it about that fancy lady who came to the store? The one in the really high shoes? Lily asked, her crayon pausing mid-stroke. Before Ethan could answer, his phone buzzed on the counter. An unknown number flashed across the screen. His stomach tightened as he answered, Mr. Parker. Vanessa Caldwell's crisp voice cut through the peaceful morning air. I trust you've had time to consider my proposition. Ethan turned away from Lily, lowering his voice. Miss Caldwell, I told you yesterday. The annual Business Leadership Gala is this Saturday, she interrupted. I expect you to accompany me. The invitation will be delivered to your store this morning. Listen, I can't just… Your lease agreement, she continued as if he hadn't spoken, has some interesting clauses. Section 12.4 allows for immediate termination under certain circumstances. It would be unfortunate if your landlord received evidence of code violations. Ethan's free hand gripped the counter. Are you threatening me? I'm stating facts, Mr. Parker. The gala starts at 7. Wear black tie. There was a pause. Oh, and do something about that awful truck of yours. I'll send a car. The line went dead. Ethan stared at his phone, barely noticing the pancake starting to smoke again. Daddy? Lily's small voice drew his attention. The pancake's turning black again. He quickly flipped it, but this one was beyond saving too. How about we stick to cereal this morning, kiddo? As he poured Lily's favorite rainbow-colored cereal, she studied his face with concerned brown eyes, her mother's eyes. You look sad, Daddy, like when you look at Mommy's pictures. The simple observation hit him hard. He sat down beside her, pulling her into a tight hug. I'm okay, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups just have tough decisions to make. Like when I had to choose between the pink backpack and the purple one for school, he couldn't help but smile. Something like that. Only a bit more complicated. They finished breakfast together, Lily chattering about her upcoming art project while Ethan tried to focus on her words instead of his churning thoughts. After cleaning up, he helped her pick out clothes for school, a task that had become easier since she'd started laying out options the night before, just like her mom used to do for her. The day passed in a blur of customers, inventory, and worried calculations. True to Vanessa's word, a cream-colored envelope arrived mid-morning. The invitation inside was thick, expensive paper with gold lettering. Ethan stuffed it in his back pocket without reading it. That evening, after their usual dinner of mac and cheese, Lily's favorite, bath time, and 2 chapters of Charlotte's Web, Ethan tucked his daughter into bed, Her room was a cozy space filled with stuffed animals and drawings taped to the walls. "Daddy." Lily clutched her favorite teddy bear, the last birthday gift from her mother. "Are you sure you're okay?" Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "I'm sure, Princess. Sometimes Daddy just has to do things he doesn't want to do to make sure we can keep our store and our home." "Like eating vegetables?" He chuckled softly. "Exactly like that." He leaned down to kiss her forehead. "But no matter what happens, I promise I'll always take care of you. That's what daddies do." "I know," she yawned, snuggling deeper under her pink comforter. "You're the best daddy ever, and you're the best daughter ever." He turned on her nightlight, a carousel that cast dancing horses on the ceiling, and quietly closed her door. Back in the living room, Ethan pulled the crumpled invitation from his pocket. The gold letters seemed to mock him as he read the details of the gala. It was at some fancy hotel he'd only driven past. The kind of place where valet parking cost more than his weekly grocery bill. Sinking into his worn recliner, he held the invitation in one hand while the other reached for the framed photo on the side table. Sarah's smile beamed back at him, frozen in time at their favorite picnic spot. What would she tell him to do? The invitation trembled slightly in his grip. He didn't have a choice. Not really. The store wasn't just his livelihood. It was Lily's future. Their home above it, the only stability she'd known since losing her mother. He couldn't risk losing it all. With a heavy sigh, Ethan placed Sarah's photo back on the table and stared at the invitation. Saturday night. He'd have to find someone to watch Lily, dig out his old suit from the back of the closet, and somehow survive an evening pretending to date a woman who'd threatened everything he held dear. The weight of it all pressed down on his shoulders as he sat in the quiet living room, listening to the soft whir of Lily's carousel nightlight through the wall, and wondering how on earth he was going to protect his daughter from whatever game Vanessa Caldwell was playing. The city lights sparkled like scattered diamonds against the darkening sky as Ethan tugged uncomfortably at his borrowed suit collar. The massive hotel hosting the gala loomed before him, its marble columns and crystal chandeliers visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. He felt like a fish out of water, standing there in his friend's slightly too tight suit, watching sleek luxury cars pull up to the entrance. "There you are, darling." Vanessa's voice carried across the courtyard as she glided toward him in a stunning black evening gown. Her smile was practiced perfection, but her eyes held a warning. "I was beginning to worry you wouldn't show." Ethan's throat tightened as she slipped her arm through his. "I always keep my word, Miss Caldwell." "Vanessa," she corrected, her red lips barely moving. "Remember our agreement. Tonight, we're a couple." The hotel lobby was a sea of designer clothes and expensive perfume. Ethan felt every bit the small-town hardware store owner he was, especially when Vanessa steered him toward a group of executives near the ballroom entrance. "Everyone," Vanessa announced, her voice honey-sweet. "This is Ethan Parker, my date for the evening." The men in $1,000 suits gave him appraising looks, while their wives smiled politely behind champagne flutes. Ethan nodded, forcing himself to stand straight despite his discomfort. "Parker, that's the hardware store in Milton, isn't it?" one of the men asked, his tone suggesting he'd rather be discussing golf scores. "Yes, sir, Parker Hardware, going on 3 generations now." "Quaint," the man's wife commented, examining her manicure. "Though I suppose those little shops are becoming quite obsolete with the big box stores these days." Ethan felt Vanessa's fingers tighten on his arm, probably expecting him to fumble the response. Instead, he smiled genuinely. "Actually, we've found that personal service and expertise keep bringing people back. Just last week, I helped old Mrs. Thompson repair her antique doorknobs instead of replacing them. Saved her hundreds of dollars and preserved a piece of her home's history." A few of the guests looked up with unexpected interest. The woman who'd made the comment tilted her head. "That's rather thoughtful, actually." Throughout the evening, Ethan noticed Vanessa watching him with growing curiosity. When he helped an elderly gentleman with his walker navigate the crowded ballroom, her eyes followed him. When he engaged a frustrated waiter in friendly conversation, making the young man laugh, she paused mid-conversation to observe. During dinner, Ethan found himself seated beside a real estate developer who was complaining about difficult tenants in his buildings. "Sometimes you have to play hardball," the developer said, sawing at his steak. "Last month I had to evict a single mother. Behind on rent, you understand. Business is business." Vanessa's fork paused halfway to her mouth as Ethan spoke up. "Did you work with her on a payment plan?" The developer blinked. "I'm sorry? A payment plan," Ethan repeated calmly. "I found that most people want to do right if you give them a chance. When my customers hit rough patches, we work something out. Usually ends up better for everyone." The table fell silent. Vanessa stared at him. her carefully constructed mask slipping for just a moment to reveal something like surprise. "That's not how business works in the real world," the developer scoffed. "Maybe it should be," Ethan replied, his voice quiet but firm. "My daughter once asked me what success means. I told her it's not just about making money, it's about making a difference." Later, as they swayed to the live band's music, Vanessa broke their silence. "You're not what I expected." "Sorry to disappoint," Ethan said dryly. "That's not what I meant." She studied his face. "You actually believe in all that? Helping people? Second chances? Making a difference? Is that so hard to believe? In my world? Yes." Something vulnerable flickered across her features before disappearing behind her usual composed expression. The evening wore on, a blur of forced small talk and pretense. By midnight, Ethan was exhausted from maintaining the charade. Vanessa's sleek car purred through the quiet streets of Milton, finally pulling up in front of his modest two-story home. The front door burst open before Ethan could even reach for his seatbelt. Lily, wearing her favorite unicorn pajamas, came running down the porch steps with Mrs. Jenkins, their elderly neighbor, calling after her to be careful. "Daddy!" Lily launched herself into his arms as he stepped out of the car. "Did you dance? Was there cake? Did you bring me any?" Ethan laughed, holding her close. "Hey, princess, shouldn't you be asleep? I waited up. Mrs. Jenkins let me watch 2 whole movies." Through the car's tinted window, Ethan caught a glimpse of Vanessa's expression. The hard edges of her face had softened, something wistful and almost gentle passing through her eyes as she watched father and daughter embrace. For a brief moment, she looked nothing like the ruthless CEO who had threatened his livelihood just days ago. Then the moment passed. She pressed a button, and her window slid up smoothly, cutting off their view of her. The car pulled away into the night, leaving Ethan standing in his borrowed suit with his daughter in his arms, wondering what he'd just glimpsed behind Vanessa Caldwell's carefully constructed walls. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of First Community Church, casting rainbow patterns across the wooden pews. Ethan sat with his shoulders straight, his Sunday best slightly worn but clean and pressed. Beside him, Lily swung her feet, her patent leather shoes gleaming, as she colored quietly in her children's Bible. The familiar sounds of the church settled around them. The rustle of hymnal pages, the soft whispers of prayer, the gentle creak of old wood. This was their sanctuary, their place of peace every Sunday morning since Sarah had passed. Ethan glanced at the empty space beside Lily where his wife used to sit, a bittersweet ache in his chest. "And now, let us bow our heads in prayer." Pastor Mike's warm voice filled the sanctuary. Just then, the heavy wooden doors at the back of the church opened with a slight squeak. Heads turned, and Ethan's heart skipped a beat. There stood Vanessa Caldwell, looking decidedly out of place in her designer dress and heels. She hesitated in the doorway, then slipped into the last pew with uncharacteristic uncertainty. Lily spotted her too. "Daddy, look!" she whispered excitedly, a bit too loud. Mrs. Henderson, in the pew ahead, turned around with a curious smile. "Shh, sweetheart," Ethan whispered, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. But his mind raced. What was Vanessa doing here? After the gala, he'd hoped she'd leave them alone. The service continued, but Ethan could barely focus on Pastor Mike's sermon about forgiveness and new beginnings. He felt Vanessa's presence like a weight on his shoulders, even from the back of the church. Every so often, Lily would twist around to wave at her, earning more curious glances from the congregation. When the final hymn ended, the usual post-service socializing began. Church members gathered in small groups, sharing news and planning potlucks. Ethan tried to guide Lily toward the door, but she had other plans. "Wait!" Lily squirmed free from his grasp and darted through the crowd toward Vanessa, who stood awkwardly near the back wall. "Lily, wait," Ethan called, but it was too late. Lily grabbed Vanessa's hand, pulling her down to whisper something. Vanessa's eyes widened, and suddenly, the church grew quiet enough to hear Lily's stage whisper, "Mommy says you're my daddy." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan felt his face flush as shocked gasps and murmurs rippled through the congregation. Mrs. Henderson's hand flew to her mouth. Old Mr. Jenkins dropped his Bible. I'm not," Vanessa stammered, for once looking completely thrown off balance. Her perfectly composed mask cracked, showing genuine surprise and something that looked almost like pain. Pastor Mike stood frozen on the steps to the pulpit, his usual warm smile replaced by confusion. Church members huddled closer together, whispering behind their hands. Ethan could practically see the gossip spreading like wildfire. "She came to the store," someone whispered. "At the gala together," another added. "Poor Ethan after Sarah." Ethan's ears burned. He pushed through the crowd to reach his daughter, his heart pounding. "Lily, honey, we need to go." But Lily wasn't done. She beamed up at Vanessa, her innocent face full of hope. "You came to church to be with us, right? Just like Mommy used to?" Vanessa's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her pale face. She looked from Lily to Ethan, then at the watching crowd. For a moment, her usual sharp confidence wavered, and Ethan caught a glimpse of something vulnerable in her eyes. I should go," Vanessa said quietly, straightening up and smoothing her dress. She turned quickly, her heels clicking rapidly on the wooden floor as she fled through the heavy doors. The silence broke into a buzz of conversation. Ethan felt dozens of eyes on him as he took Lily's hand. "Come on, sweetie. Time to go home." "But Daddy, why is she leaving? Did I say something wrong?" Lily's lower lip trembled. "No, honey." Ethan led her through the crowd, nodding stiffly at people who tried to catch his eye. "We'll talk about it in the car." The drive home was quiet, except for the soft country gospel playing on the radio. Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror at Lily, who sat subdued in her car seat, hugging her stuffed rabbit. "Lily," he began gently, turning down the radio, "we need to talk about what happened at church." "I'm sorry, Daddy," she said in a small voice. "I just thought, since she came to church like Mommy used to." Ethan's heart squeezed. "I know you miss Mommy, sweetheart. We both do. But Miss Caldwell, Vanessa, she's not your mommy. She's just someone Daddy knows from work. But you went to the party with her, and she smiled at me like Mommy did in the pictures." Ethan pulled up in front of their store, putting the car in park. He turned to face his daughter, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups, sometimes things are complicated, honey. We shouldn't tell stories about people that aren't true. It can hurt their feelings, and other people might get the wrong idea." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to hurt anyone." "Oh, sweetheart." Ethan reached back to squeeze her hand. "I know you didn't. You have such a big heart, just like your mom did." As they walked from the car to their apartment above the store, Ethan noticed several church members passing by on the sidewalk. They whispered behind their hands, giving him sympathetic looks. Mrs. Henderson and her friend Martha huddled by the bakery next door, their heads close together in conversation. When they saw him looking, they quickly turned away. Lily skipped ahead to the store entrance, her natural resilience already bouncing back. But Ethan felt the weight of every whisper, every curious glance. In a small town like theirs, he knew the story would be all over by dinner time. He could only imagine what Vanessa would do when she recovered from her shock. Monday morning dawned crisp and clear over Main Street. Ethan stood outside Parker's Hardware, methodically arranging the sidewalk display of garden tools. His movements were mechanical, his mind elsewhere as he replayed yesterday's church incident over and over. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Vanessa stepped out, her designer heels clicking against the concrete. Even in the early morning light, she looked immaculate in her tailored business suit. Several passers-by slowed their pace, watching with obvious interest. "We need to talk," Ethan said firmly, setting down a rake with more force than necessary. Vanessa glanced around at their growing audience and smiled sweetly. "Of course, darling." Her voice carried just enough for the onlookers to hear. Ethan's jaw tightened. He gestured toward the store entrance. Inside, once in the privacy of his office, really just a cramped back room with a desk, Ethan turned to face her. "This has gone too far. The whole town is talking about us after what happened at church." "I'm well aware," Vanessa replied, perching on the edge of his desk. "My phone hasn't stopped ringing with calls from the board about my secret family." She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her skirt, "which is exactly why we need to maintain appearances." "Maintain appearances?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "This isn't some corporate merger, Vanessa. This is my life, my daughter's life." Speaking of Lily, Vanessa's voice softened slightly. "She seems quite taken with me." "Don't." Ethan's voice was sharp. "Don't use my daughter as leverage." "I'm stating a fact," Vanessa countered. "She's already told the whole church I'm her. Well, how do you think she'll feel if I suddenly disappear?" Ethan sank into his chair, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Through the office window, he could see Mrs. Henderson from the flower shop slow walking past for the third time, clearly hoping to catch some drama. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked finally. "Simple. We continue dating, publicly, dinners, community events, that sort of thing. It protects both our interests." Vanessa ticked off points on her manicured fingers. "You keep your store, I maintain my corporate image, and Lily." She paused, something flickering in her eyes. "Lily gets to be happy. For how long?" "Let's say 3 months. That's long enough for a respectable relationship to naturally run its course, if necessary. Ethan studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation. But all he saw was cool efficiency. This was just another business deal to her. Except it wasn't. Not really. Because Lily was involved now. Fine, he said at last. 3 months. But we do this my way. No more surprises, no more showing up unannounced, and we need to be careful about Lily's feelings. Agreed. Vanessa stood, extending her hand. Shall we seal it with a handshake? Ethan looked at her outstretched hand and shook his head. The whole town is watching through that window. If we're doing this. He stepped closer, placing a gentle kiss on her cheek. Vanessa stiffened for a moment, clearly caught off guard. Through the window, Mrs. Henderson nearly walked into a lamppost. 7 o'clock tonight, Ethan said quietly. Dinner at my house. Lily will want to show you her room. I'll bring dessert, Vanessa replied, her usual confidence slightly shaken. That evening, Ethan's modest home buzzed with nervous energy. Lily had changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on her favorite purple dress. She bounced around the kitchen as Ethan checked on the lasagna. Is Vanessa really coming to dinner? Lily asked for the 10th time, twirling in place. Yes, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about, though. This is just a friendly dinner. The doorbell rang, and Lily sprinted to answer it before Ethan could stop her. Vanessa stood on the porch, looking somewhat out of place in casual clothes, though her version of casual still probably cost more than Ethan's monthly mortgage payment. She held a bakery box in her hands. I brought tiramisu, she announced, then added awkwardly, Kids like tiramisu, right? I don't know what that is, Lily declared cheerfully, grabbing Vanessa's free hand. Come see my room. I have new stickers. Lily? Ethan called after them. Dinner's almost ready, but his daughter had already dragged Vanessa up the stairs, chattering about her stuffed animal collection. Ethan could hear Vanessa's slightly strained responses, clearly unpracticed at child-level conversation. 20 minutes later, they sat around Ethan's small kitchen table. Lily dominated the conversation, switching topics at dizzying speed, while Ethan and Vanessa maintained a careful distance, their attempts at small talk stiff and formal. Can Vanessa read me a bedtime story tonight? Lily asked, marinara sauce smeared across her chin. Oh, I don't. Vanessa started. Please? Lily's eyes grew wide and hopeful. Daddy does all the voices, but I bet you know different ones. Ethan watched Vanessa's careful composure crack slightly. I should really get going after dinner, she said. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Oh? Lily's face fell. But you'll come back, right? Like, tomorrow? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Ethan saw something flicker across Vanessa's face, uncertainty, perhaps even guilt. She glanced at him, then back at Lily's hopeful expression. We'll see, she said finally. Maybe another night this week. Lily beamed, satisfied with this answer, and launched into a story about her teacher's new haircut. Under the table, Ethan's hands clenched into fists. This charade was going to be harder than he thought, because watching his daughter light up around Vanessa, seeing her hope bloom so freely, it was both beautiful and terrifying. The rest of dinner passed in a similar fashion, Lily's endless chatter filling the spaces between Ethan and Vanessa's careful, measured responses. They sat like actors in a play, going through the motions of a family dinner while trying to ignore the weight of what they'd agreed to. The automatic doors of Thompson's Grocery slid open with a familiar whoosh. Ethan grabbed a shopping cart, its front wheel squeaking as he pushed it into the brightly lit store. Lily skipped alongside him while Vanessa followed, looking decidedly out of place in her designer outfit. Mrs. Thompson, arranging apples at the produce section, nearly dropped her fruit at the sight of them. Her eyes widened behind thick glasses as she elbowed her teenage assistant and pointed not so subtly. We need cereal first, Lily announced, tugging at Ethan's sleeve. Can we get the one with marshmallows? Let's start with vegetables, Ethan countered, steering toward the produce section. He could feel the weight of stares from other shoppers. Vanessa, could you grab some carrots? Vanessa stood frozen, studying the vegetable display like it was a complex financial report. Which ones? The orange ones, Lily giggled, pointing at the obvious bundle of carrots. I know they're orange, Vanessa said defensively, but her uncertain handling of the produce bags told a different story. After 3 attempts to separate the plastic, she finally got one open, only to drop it when it billowed with air. Lily dissolved into more giggles. Even Ethan couldn't suppress a smile. Perhaps I could be of more help in another department, Vanessa said stiffly, smoothing her blazer. How about you help me pick cereal? Lily offered, extending her small hand. Something in Vanessa's face softened as she accepted it. Ethan watched them head toward the cereal aisle, Lily chattering away about the merits of different breakfast options. He quickly gathered the vegetables they needed, aware of Mrs. Thompson and her friend Susan whispering behind the banana display. When he caught up with Lily and Vanessa in the cereal aisle, he found them deep in serious consultation over 2 boxes. "But this one has a toy inside," Lily was explaining earnestly. "The sugar content is concerning," Vanessa replied, studying the nutritional information with the same intensity she probably applied to quarterly reports. "That's why it's good," Lily declared. A genuine laugh escaped Vanessa, perhaps her first real one since they'd met. The sound drew curious looks from other shoppers, including Tom Baker from the bank, who was suddenly very interested in the oatmeal selection. They moved through the store, gathering items from Ethan's carefully prepared list. Vanessa's corporate efficiency emerged in unexpected ways. She organized their cart by food groups and insisted on comparing price per ounce calculations, even as she remained hilariously baffled by the mechanics of selecting fresh produce. In the cookie aisle, Lily's eyes grew wide with possibility. "Can we get cookies, Dad, please?" Before Ethan could answer, Vanessa was already examining packages with Lily. "Which ones do you recommend?" she asked seriously. "These have chocolate chips and rainbow sprinkles," Lily said reverently, holding up a package. "An excellent combination," Vanessa agreed, placing them in the cart. She caught Ethan's raised eyebrow and added, "The sprinkles add important visual appeal to the product." "Is that what they taught you in business school?" Ethan teased quietly. A faint blush colored Vanessa's cheeks. "Market research is very important." At the checkout, Mary Ellen rang up their items with painstaking slowness, clearly trying to observe every interaction between them. Vanessa stood close to Ethan, her hand occasionally brushing his arm in a show for their audience. The touch sent unexpected warmth through him each time. Lily helped bag the groceries, proudly showing Vanessa how to arrange the eggs on top so they don't get squished. Several customers lingered near the magazine rack, phones suspiciously raised. The sun was setting as they left the store, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. They each carried bags, even Vanessa, who managed to make grocery carrying look elegant. Lily walked between them, swinging her small bag of cookies. "Can we have cookies after dinner?" she asked hopefully. "We'll see," Ethan replied, catching Mrs. Peterson watching them from her porch as they passed. More curtains twitched along Cedar Street, and he could practically hear the phone lines buzzing with fresh gossip about the unlikely trio. Vanessa must have noticed too. She shifted her grocery bags to one arm and reached for Lily's free hand. The gesture looked natural, unrehearsed. Lily beamed up at her, and for a moment, they looked like any other family walking home from the store. The thought should have bothered Ethan more than it did. Instead, watching Lily's happy face and Vanessa's gradual relaxation into their small-town rhythm, he felt a curious mix of emotions. Embarrassment at being the center of such obvious speculation, yes, but also something warmer, something that felt dangerously like hope. Mrs. Miller watered her already soaked petunias as they approached Ethan's house, not even trying to hide her interest. Vanessa straightened her spine, every inch the polished CEO, but her grip on Lily's hand remained gentle. "I think the cookies survived the journey," Vanessa said as they reached the front steps, making Lily laugh again. That laugh, bright and real and full of joy, echoed in the early evening air. It was the same laugh Sarah used to delight in. Ethan realized with a pang. He hadn't heard it nearly enough since losing her. The neighbors kept watching. The gossip would continue, but as Lily bounced excitedly up the steps, pulling Vanessa along while chattering about cookie recipes, Ethan found he didn't mind quite as much as he should have. The soft glow of Lily's bedside lamp cast warm shadows across her pink wallpapered room. Ethan stood in the hallway, his hand frozen on the doorknob, watching an unexpected scene unfold before him. Vanessa sat perched on the edge of Lily's bed, a well-worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit open in her lap. Her normally commanding voice had softened to a gentle murmur as she read, "Real isn't how you are made," said the skin horse. "It's a thing that happens to you." Lily snuggled deeper under her butterfly-patterned comforter, her eyes wide with wonder. Not at the familiar story, she'd heard it dozens of times, but at Vanessa, who seemed transformed in the dim light. Gone was the sharp-edged CEO. In her place sat someone else entirely. "When a child loves you for a long, long time," Vanessa continued reading, her finger trailing along the words, "not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real." Her voice caught slightly on the word real, something Ethan didn't miss. When the story ended, Lily yawned and asked sleepily, "Did anyone read to you when you were little?" A shadow crossed Vanessa's face. "No, sweetheart, not really." That's sad, Lily mumbled, her eyes already closing. Everyone should have stories. Vanessa tucked the blanket around Lily's shoulders, her movements tentative as if she wasn't quite sure of the proper technique. She stood quietly, nearly bumping into Ethan in the doorway. Tea? He offered, surprising himself. Downstairs in the kitchen, Ethan pulled out 2 mismatched mugs. The cheerful yellow one had been Sarah's favorite. He hesitated, then handed it to Vanessa. The kettle whistled, its sound sharp in the evening quiet. You're good with her, Ethan said, pouring the hot water over the tea bags. I wouldn't have expected that. Vanessa wrapped her hands around the mug, her red nail polish a stark contrast against the yellow ceramic. I wouldn't have expected it either. She paused, staring into the steeping tea. My parents believed in nannies and boarding schools. Bedtime stories weren't part of the curriculum. That sounds lonely, Ethan said softly, settling into the chair across from her at the small kitchen table. It was efficient, Vanessa replied, but her tone lacked its usual certainty. They were building an empire. Children don't fit well into board meetings. The kitchen clock ticked steadily. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating the room through the curtains. Sarah, my wife. She read to Lily every night, Ethan found himself saying. Even in the hospital, near the end, she'd hold up picture books with hands shaking from the treatments, but she never missed a night. Vanessa looked up from her tea, meeting his eyes. For once, there was no calculation in her gaze. How long ago? 2 years, 4 months, and 12 days. The numbers came automatically. They always did. Does it get easier? Her question was barely above a whisper. Different, Ethan corrected, running his thumb along the rim of his mug. Not easier, just different. Some days I can smile at her pictures, other days. He shrugged, leaving the sentence unfinished. Vanessa nodded slowly. My mother died last year. Heart attack during a hostile takeover. I found myself managing her funeral between conference calls. She gave a bitter laugh. Even at the end, it was all about business. They sat in silence, the tea growing cold between them. The kitchen, usually a place of morning rushes and dinner preparations, felt different in the late evening quiet, more honest, somehow. Why did you really want me to date you? Ethan asked suddenly. The truth this time. Vanessa set down her mug carefully. The board thinks I'm too harsh. Bad press. They wanted me to show a softer side. She met his eyes. A small-town widower with an adorable daughter? Perfect PR move. And now? She looked toward the stairs, where Lily's nightlight cast a faint glow. Now I'm not sure of anything anymore. The grandfather clock in the living room chimed 10, making them both jump slightly. Vanessa stood, smoothing her skirt with practiced precision. I should go, she said, her CEO voice creeping back in. Early meeting tomorrow. Ethan walked her to the door, holding it open as she stepped onto the porch. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of approaching autumn. Thank you, she said formally. For the tea. Thank you, he replied. For the story. She nodded once, then clicked down the steps in her heels. Her black car waited at the curb, sleek and expensive against the modest neighborhood backdrop. Ethan stood at the window, watching as she drove away, her taillights growing smaller until they disappeared around the corner. He remained there longer than necessary, one hand pressed against the cool glass. The yellow mug sat in the sink, Sarah's mug, used by someone else for the first time in 2 years. He wasn't sure how to feel about that. He wasn't sure how to feel about any of it. The elementary school auditorium buzzed with the chaos of after-school rehearsal. Little voices echoed off the walls as children in partially completed costumes scurried around like excited puppies. Lily Parker stood center stage in a glittering star costume, practicing her lines with determination. Ethan sat in the back row, his toolbox beside him. He'd promised to help repair some wobbly set pieces after rehearsal. His eyes remained fixed on Lily, pride warming his chest as she delivered her lines without hesitation. The heavy auditorium door creaked open, letting in a shaft of afternoon sunlight. Heads turned as the distinctive click of high heels echoed through the space. Vanessa Caldwell strode down the center aisle, looking oddly out of place in her tailored business suit among the craft supplies and cardboard scenery. Mrs. Thompson, the music teacher, nearly dropped her script. Oh my, she whispered to another parent. Isn't that the CEO who's been seen around town with Ethan Parker? Lily spotted Vanessa and waved enthusiastically from the stage. Look, everyone, she came to watch me. Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat as parents turned to stare. He hadn't expected Vanessa to show up here. This wasn't part of their arrangement. Vanessa settled into a seat near the front, her perfect posture a stark contrast to the slouching parents around her. She smiled and gave Lily a small wave, then pulled out a notebook as if she were attending a board meeting rather than a children's play rehearsal. The music teacher cleared her throat. "Well, let's continue from scene 3, children." As the rehearsal progressed, Ethan couldn't help but notice how Vanessa's expression softened while watching Lily perform. Her pen moved across the notebook, but her eyes never left the stage. When Lily delivered her big solo line, "Even the smallest star can light up the darkest night," Vanessa actually applauded. After the run-through, Mrs. Thompson announced it was time to work on the sets. "We need all the parent volunteers we can get," she said, glancing nervously at Vanessa. To everyone's surprise, Vanessa stood up and removed her suit jacket. "I'd like to help," she said, rolling up the sleeves of her silk blouse. "Though, I should warn you, I've never used a hammer before." A few parents exchanged skeptical looks, but Lily bounced over excitedly. "You can help paint my star. Daddy's fixing the woodland backdrop." Ethan watched as Vanessa followed Lily to the craft table. She held the paintbrush awkwardly, clearly out of her element among the bottles of glitter and craft paint, but she listened intently as Lily explained exactly how the star should sparkle. "No, like this," Lily demonstrated, guiding Vanessa's hand to add silver glitter to the points of the star. "See? Now it looks magical." "It certainly does," Vanessa agreed, a genuine smile softening her usually sharp features. As the afternoon wore on, Ethan noticed the initial tension in the room beginning to dissolve. Mrs. Thompson actually laughed when Vanessa got paint on her expensive blouse, and other parents started including her in their casual conversations about bake sales and costume details. "You're doing that wrong," one of the dads said good-naturedly when Vanessa attempted to hammer a nail into the set piece. He showed her the correct technique, and soon she was managing to help, albeit somewhat clumsily, with the basic repairs. By the time rehearsal ended, Vanessa's perfectly styled hair had come loose. Her clothes were speckled with paint, and she was sporting a band-aid on one finger, courtesy of her first attempt at hammering. But she was smiling more naturally than Ethan had ever seen. Parents began gathering their children and heading home. Lily hugged Vanessa tightly, leaving glitter handprints on her skirt. "Thank you for helping with my star. Will you come to the real show too?" Vanessa glanced at Ethan before answering carefully. "If your father thinks it's all right." "Of course she can come," Lily answered for him, then skipped off to gather her things. The drive to Vanessa's house was quiet. Streetlights flickered on as dusk settled over the small town. Vanessa studied her paint-stained hands in her lap. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice lacking its usual commanding tone, "for letting me try today. I know I wasn't invited." Ethan kept his eyes on the road but allowed himself a small smile. He didn't respond, but the silence felt different now, less tense, more thoughtful. As they pulled up to Vanessa's impressive house, the contrast between her paint-splattered appearance and the mansion's perfectly manicured lawn seemed to highlight just how far she'd stepped out of her comfort zone that afternoon. She reached for the door handle, then paused. "I meant what I said to Lily about the show, but only if you're comfortable with it." Ethan's faint smile remained as he watched her walk up her driveway, her usual confident stride slightly softened by the experience of an afternoon spent among children's crafts and community spirit. The town square transformed into a wonderland of twinkling lights and festive banners for the annual Riverside Festival. Red and gold streamers danced in the autumn breeze, and the scent of caramel apples and cotton candy filled the air. Ethan balanced on a ladder, hanging strings of lights across the main entrance arch, while keeping one eye on Lily, who bounced around the square like a rubber ball. "Daddy, look! They're setting up the face-painting booth," Lily called out, her pigtails swinging as she pointed excitedly. "That's great, sweetheart," Ethan replied, carefully securing another strand of lights. "Just stay where I can see you, okay?" The click of heels on pavement made him glance down. Vanessa stood at the base of his ladder, looking oddly out of place in her designer suit among the homey decorations. "Need any help?" she asked, shielding her eyes from the sunday. Ethan nearly dropped the hammer he was holding. "You're offering to help with manual labor?" "I'm not completely useless," Vanessa said, a slight smile tugging at her lips. She slipped off her blazer and draped it over a nearby chair. "Besides, I heard this festival's quite the event. I thought, well, we should probably be seen together." Before Ethan could respond, Lily ran up and grabbed Vanessa's hand. "You came. Can you help me make paper flowers for the community booth, please?" Something in Vanessa's expression softened as she looked down at Lily's eager face. "Of course, sweetheart. Show me how." Ethan watched as Vanessa allowed herself to be pulled toward a table covered in colored paper and scissors. She sat down beside Lily, awkwardly following the little girl's instructions on folding and cutting. Her usually perfect hair fell slightly forward as she concentrated, and Ethan caught himself smiling at the sight. The afternoon passed in a blur of preparation. To everyone's surprise, Vanessa threw herself into the work with unexpected enthusiasm. She organized the raffle tickets, helped arrange display tables, and even climbed up on a step stool to hang streamers, despite wearing her expensive silk blouse. As sunset approached, the festival came alive. Families poured in through the decorated arch, children laughing and running between game booths. Lily insisted on trying everything: ring toss, balloon pop, the duck pond. To Ethan's amazement, Vanessa joined in, cheering Lily's successes and consoling her near misses with genuine warmth. "Step right up for the annual family photo contest." Mayor Thompson's voice boomed through the speakers. "All families gather by the main stage." Lily tugged at both their hands. "Can we? Please?" Ethan hesitated, but Vanessa squeezed his arm gently. "We should. For appearance's sake," she whispered, though her smile seemed more real than calculated. They joined the crowd of families positioning themselves for photos. Lily stood between them, beaming. Ethan felt Vanessa's shoulder brush against his as they posed, and something fluttered in his chest, something that had nothing to do with keeping up appearances. The evening progressed with carnival games and shared cotton candy. Lily's face was painted with sparkly butterflies, and even Vanessa had a small heart painted on her cheek, courtesy of Lily's insistence. They looked like any other family enjoying the festival, and Ethan found himself forgetting, more and more often, that it wasn't real. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, Mayor Thompson took the stage again. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our most cherished tradition, the crowning of Riverside's Family of the Year." The crowd gathered around the stage, clutching numbered tickets from the afternoon's activities. Ethan hardly paid attention as the mayor spoke about community spirit and family values. He was too distracted by Lily's sticky cotton candy fingers clutching his hand, and Vanessa's perfume carried on the evening breeze. "And this year's Family of the Year Island, the Parker family." Ethan's head snapped up. The crowd erupted in applause, and spotlights swung toward them. Lily squealed with delight, jumping up and down. "Come on up," the mayor called, waving them forward. In a daze, Ethan found himself walking toward the stage, Lily skipping between him and Vanessa. They climbed the steps as the applause continued. The mayor placed a silly paper crown on each of their heads, and Lily giggled as hers slipped over one eye. "This family has shown us what community spirit truly means," Mayor Thompson announced. "From Ethan's hardware store that's helped build our homes for decades, to young Lily's infectious joy in our school plays, to Miss Caldwell's recent volunteer work, they represent the best of Riverside." Ethan glanced at Vanessa, expecting to see her usual calculated smile. Instead, he found her eyes shining with unexpected tears. She caught him looking and quickly blinked them away, but her hand found his behind Lily's back and squeezed tight. For one perfect moment, standing there under the festival lights with paper crowns on their heads and Lily beaming between them, it felt real. The crowd's cheers faded to a distant hum. Ethan could almost believe they were truly a family. Not a widower, his daughter, and a CEO playing pretend, but something whole and genuine. The first firework burst overhead in a shower of gold sparks. Lily clapped in delight, her face tilted skyward. More explosions followed, painting the night sky in brilliant colors. In the changing light of the fireworks, Ethan turned to look at Vanessa. She was already watching him, her expression softer than he'd ever seen it. The paper crown sat crooked on her perfectly styled hair, and a smudge of cotton candy stained her expensive blouse. She'd never looked more beautiful. Their eyes met and held as another firework illuminated the night. Something unspoken passed between them, something that made Ethan's heart beat faster and Vanessa's breath catch. Lily's delighted laughter rang out as she bounced between them, still clutching both their hands, completely unaware of the moment she'd created. The sky continued to explode in color, reflecting in Vanessa's eyes as she held Ethan's gaze, neither of them willing to look away first. For just this moment, under the festival lights and falling sparks, they weren't pretending anymore. The morning after the festival dawned crisp and clear. Vanessa stood in Ethan's driveway, checking her reflection in her car's window. Her designer suit felt like armor after days of casual clothes in the small town. Lily burst out of the house, still in her pajamas, her feet padding across the concrete. "Do you really have to go?" Lily's lower lip trembled as she wrapped her arms around Vanessa's waist. Vanessa's perfectly manicured hand hesitated before settling on Lily's head. "Just for today, sweetheart. Board meetings are very important." Ethan appeared in the doorway, holding Lily's forgotten backpack. The morning sun caught his face, highlighting the gentle concern in his eyes. "Drive safe," he said simply. The drive to the city felt longer than usual. Vanessa rehearsed her presentations, but memories of the festival kept interrupting her thoughts. Lily's laughter, the warmth of Ethan's smile, the genuine joy she'd felt standing with them under the firework. The gleaming corporate tower of Caldwell Enterprises loomed ahead. Vanessa squared her shoulders and strode through the lobby, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Her assistant scrambled to keep up, rattling off messages and schedule changes. "The board members are already waiting, Miss Caldwell." Vanessa pushed open the heavy oak doors of the boardroom. 12 stern faces turned toward her. The air felt thick with tension. "Gentlemen," she began, but Marcus Wellington, the senior board member, cut her off. "Save it, Vanessa." He slapped a folder onto the polished table. "Care to explain these?" Photos spilled across the surface. Candid shots of her at the festival, helping with the school play, walking with Ethan and Lily. Her stomach clenched. "Your little charade with the hardware store owner," Wellington continued, his voice dripping with disdain. "Did you think we wouldn't find out?" Vanessa maintained her composure, though her heart raced. "My personal life is not board business. It is when you're making a mockery of this company." Another board member, Richardson, stood up. "Playing house with some small-town nobody? The Vanessa Caldwell we know would have crushed that store months ago." "The situation required a different approach," Vanessa said firmly, but her words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Wellington leaned forward. "We've been watching you, Vanessa. You're getting soft, emotional. That's not what this company needs." "I'm handling the situation," she insisted. "Are you?" Richardson sneered. "Because it looks like this widower and his brat are handling you." Vanessa's fingers curled into fists beneath the table. The urge to defend Ethan and Lily surprised her with its intensity. "Your position as CEO requires certain standards," Wellington continued. "Standards you're failing to meet. Consider this a warning. In this embarrassing situation, or we'll be forced to take action." The meeting dragged on for hours. Vanessa presented reports and projections with her usual precision, but the threat hung heavy in the air. By the time she left the tower, her shoulders ached with tension. The drive back to Riverside felt like an escape. The sunset painted the sky in soft pinks and purples as she pulled up to Ethan's house. Light spilled from the windows, and she could smell something cooking, probably one of Ethan's simple but delicious meals. Lily threw open the door before Vanessa could knock. "You're back! Daddy made spaghetti, and I helped with the garlic bread." Vanessa forced a smile, though her hands trembled slightly as she set down her briefcase. The warmth of the house wrapped around her like a blanket, making the cold corporate world feel distant. In the kitchen, Ethan stood at the stove, stirring the sauce. He glanced up, and something in his expression told her he noticed something was wrong, but he didn't press, just gestured to the set table. "Perfect timing," he said quietly. "Food's ready." Lily chattered throughout dinner about her day at school, filling the silence. Vanessa pushed her pasta around the plate, her appetite gone. Her hand shook slightly as she lifted her water glass. Ethan's eyes caught the tremor, but he simply passed her the garlic bread without comment. His silence felt like understanding rather than judgment, and somehow that made it harder to maintain her composed facade. "Can we watch a movie after dinner?" Lily asked, sauce smeared adorably across her chin. "Not tonight, sweetie," Ethan said gently. "It's a school night, and it's already past your normal dinner time." Vanessa sat quietly, watching them interact, knowing the board's threats could destroy this simple peace. Her fingers clenched around her fork as she tried to steady them, but Ethan noticed. He always noticed. His warm eyes met hers across the table, full of unspoken questions she couldn't answer. The evening wound down with its usual routine, Lily reluctantly heading upstairs to brush her teeth, Ethan cleaning up the kitchen. The soft sounds of a small family's life settling into night. Vanessa helped dry dishes, her usual confidence shaken by the day's confrontation. "Thank you for dinner," she said finally, her voice barely steady. Ethan just nodded, watching her with that quiet intensity that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed walls. She gathered her things, her designer bag feeling out of place in this homey kitchen. The weight of the board's threats pressed down on her shoulders as she prepared to leave. Her hand still trembled slightly as she reached for her car keys, and she saw Ethan notice again, but true to his nature, he didn't demand explanations or press for details. Instead, he simply held the door for her, his solid presence offering silent support she wasn't sure she deserved. The night air was cool on her face as she stepped onto the porch, carrying the weight of decisions she wasn't ready to make. Early morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows of Ethan's modest home. The golden rays caught dust motes dancing in the air as he stood at the counter, measuring coffee grounds into the filter. His movements were slow, peaceful, still caught in the magic of last night's festival. The Family of the Year sash hung over a kitchen chair, a reminder of that perfect moment under the fireworks. The sound of Vanessa's heels clicking on hardwood drew his attention. She paced in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, voice low but tense. Ethan didn't mean to eavesdrop, but her words carried clearly through the quiet house. "Listen, Richard, the situation is under control," Vanessa said, her tone sharp and businesslike, so different from her warm laughter at the festival. "The whole relationship was strategic from the start. Small-town drama was threatening our development plans, so I took steps to manage public opinion." Ethan's hand froze over the coffee maker. His chest tightened. "Of course, I didn't actually fall for him," Vanessa continued, unaware of her audience. "It was damage control, pure and simple. Dating the local shopkeeper made us look sympathetic instead of predatory. The board's concerns about my judgment are completely unfounded." The coffee filter slipped from Ethan's numb fingers, ground scattering across the counter. The soft sound made Vanessa turn. Their eyes met through the kitchen doorway. The color drained from her face. "I'll call you back," she whispered into the phone. Silence filled the space between them, heavy and suffocating. Ethan's hands gripped the counter edge until his knuckles went white. "Ethan," Vanessa started, taking a step forward. "I can explain." "Explain what?" His voice came out rough. "How you manipulated me. Use my daughter? It's not that simple." Vanessa's perfectly manicured hands twisted together. "Things changed. I changed." "Did you?" Ethan pushed away from the counter, coffee forgotten. "Or is this just another act, another strategic move?" "No!" Vanessa's designer heels clicked as she moved closer. "What happened between us? What's still happening? It's real." "Real?" Ethan gave a bitter laugh. "Like the real estate deal you threatened me with, or the lease you held over my head to force me to that gala? That was before I knew you, before Lily." "Don't." Ethan's voice cracked. "Don't you dare bring my daughter into this." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Neither adult noticed. "She matters to me," Vanessa insisted, reaching for Ethan's arm. He jerked away. "You both matter to me. More than my job, more than your precious reputation." Ethan's words cut like ice. "The one you were just defending to Richard? You don't understand corporate politics. The board is looking for any excuse to remove me. I had to say those things." "Had to lie, you mean?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "Like you've been lying this whole time?" "Not the whole time." Vanessa's careful composure cracked. "Yes, it started as business. But these past weeks, the grocery shopping, the school play, reading to Lily, that was all real." "Was it?" Ethan stopped pacing to face her. "Or were you just playing house, trying on the small-town life like one of your designer outfits?" Vanessa flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair?" Ethan's laugh held no humor. "You want to talk about fair? How about threatening a single father's livelihood? Using his grieving daughter's need for a mother figure? I never meant to get caught." Ethan's voice rose. "To actually feel something? Which is it, Vanessa?" "Both. Neither." Vanessa threw up her hands. "I don't know anymore. All I know is that somewhere between your stupid hardware store and Lily's bedtime stories, everything changed. I changed." "Right. Just like that?" Ethan's tone dripped skepticism. The ruthless CEO suddenly grew a heart? "Yes." Tears sparkled in Vanessa's eyes. "Is that so hard to believe? From the woman who just told her board it was all strategy?" "Yeah, at Island." A small sniffle from the stairs finally caught their attention. They turned to see Lily sitting on the steps, still in her pajamas, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Lily pad," Ethan breathed, anger evaporating into concern. "Sweetheart." Vanessa stepped toward the stairs, but Lily scrambled backward. "You are pretending?" Lily's voice quivered. "Like in my school play?" "No, honey, it's complicated," Vanessa tried to explain. "Don't." Ethan's voice was steel. "You've done enough." Vanessa's shoulders slumped. She looked between father and daughter, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. "I never meant to hurt either of you." "But you did." Ethan moved to the stairs, gathering Lily in his arms. "I think you should leave." "Ethan, please, leave!" The word exploded from him, making Lily flinch. Vanessa grabbed her purse with trembling hands. At the door, she turned back one last time. "What I said on the phone, it wasn't true. Not anymore. Go." Ethan's voice was tired now, drained. The door slammed behind her with a finality that echoed through the house. Lily buried her face in her father's shirt, her small body shaking with sobs. Ethan held her close, his own eyes burning with unshed tears as he sat with her on the stairs. The morning sunlight continued to stream through the windows, but its warmth no longer reached them. The Family of the Year sash hung limply over the kitchen chair, a mockery of last night's joy. In the silence, the only sound was Lily's quiet crying and the distant rev of Vanessa's car engine fading away. The morning mail landed on Ethan's desk with a dull thud. His hands trembled as he opened the official-looking envelope, though he already knew what it contained. The foreclosure notice stared back at him in cold, black letters. 30 days. That's all he had left of the store his father had built, the legacy he'd hoped to pass on to Lily someday. Through the store window, gray clouds matched his mood, threatening rain. A few loyal customers browsed the aisles, their footsteps echoing in the unusually quiet space. Mrs. Jenkins, who'd been shopping here since before Ethan was born, gave him a sad smile as she passed. News traveled fast in small towns. "Daddy?" Lily's voice came from behind the counter where she sat doing homework. "Why is everyone looking at us funny today?" Ethan swallowed hard. "Sometimes grown-up things are complicated, sweetie." The bell above the door chimed, and Tom Wilson, the local newspaper editor, walked in with a copy of today's paper tucked under his arm. Without a word, he placed it on the counter. There on the front page was Vanessa's photo, alongside the headline, "Caldwell Enterprises CEO ousted by board." The subtitle read, "Small-Town Romance Scandal Leads to Corporate Shakeup." Ethan's stomach churned. He'd avoided looking at any news since their fight, but now the reality of what had happened hit him full force. The article detailed Vanessa's fall from grace in cruel, precise terms. Despite everything, he felt a pang of sympathy. He knew how it felt to have your life pulled apart in public. "Is that Miss Vanessa?" Lily asked, peering at the paper. "She looks sad in that picture." "Yes, honey, she does." The afternoon dragged on, marked by whispers and sideways glances from customers. Some offered awkward words of encouragement. Others just shook their heads. By closing time, Ethan's shoulders ached from the weight of their pity. At home, Lily pushed her dinner around her plate, unusually quiet. The empty chair where Vanessa had sat during their brief time together seemed to mock them both. "Daddy?" Lily finally spoke, her voice small. "Why won't Miss Vanessa come back? Did I do something wrong?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. But she read me stories, and she helped with my school play. And she smiled at you like Mommy used to smile at you in the pictures." Lily's lower lip trembled. I thought maybe." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and Ethan felt his heart shatter. He moved to kneel beside her chair, pulling her into a tight hug. "Oh, Lily, Bug, I'm so sorry. Everyone at school says their parents were talking about us. They say Miss Vanessa was just pretending." Lily buried her face in his shoulder. "But it didn't feel like pretending, Daddy. It felt real." Ethan closed his eyes, fighting back his own tears. How could he explain that sometimes adults made mistakes? That sometimes they let their hearts believe things they shouldn't? "I miss her," Lily whispered. "I know, baby, I know." After dinner, Ethan helped Lily get ready for bed. She clutched the stuffed bear Vanessa had won for her at the festival, her eyes still red from crying. As he tucked her in, she grabbed his hand. "Can you fix it, Daddy? Like you fix things in the store?" The innocent question nearly broke him. Here was his daughter, believing in his ability to repair anything broken, just like he'd always taught her. But this time, he had no tools, no spare parts, no simple solution. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "things happen that we can't fix right away. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. Promise? I promise things will get better." The words felt hollow in his mouth, but he forced a smile for her sake. Lily finally drifted off to sleep, still clutching the bear. Ethan knelt beside her bed, watching her peaceful face in the soft glow of her nightlight. His brave, beautiful girl who'd already lost so much. The foreclosure notice burned in his pocket. The newspaper headlines echoed in his mind. In 30 days, he'd lose not just his store, but his family's history, his daughter's inheritance, their security. He'd failed. Failed his father's legacy. Failed Lily. Failed himself. Kneeling there in the quiet darkness, Ethan felt truly hopeless for the first time since his wife died. Back then, he'd had his faith in his store to keep him going. Now, both seemed to be slipping through his fingers like sand. He brushed a gentle kiss on Lily's forehead and whispered, "I love you," before quietly leaving her room. In the hallway, his eyes fell on the family photos lining the wall. Generations of Parkers standing proud in front of the hardware store. Soon, those pictures would be all that remained of their family's dream. The house felt emptier than ever as he made his way downstairs. Even the spaces Vanessa had only briefly occupied, the kitchen where she'd attempted to cook dinner, the living room where she'd read stories to Lily, seemed to echo with absence. He'd let himself believe, just for a moment, that they could be something real, that happiness might be possible again. Now, in the crushing silence of his home, with his daughter's tears still damp on his shirt and failure pressing in from all sides, Ethan Parker had no idea how to keep his promise that things would get better. The setting sun painted golden streaks across Vanessa's penthouse windows, but the spectacular view brought her no comfort. She sat alone in her designer armchair, a cup of untouched tea growing cold beside her. The sprawling city below, once her kingdom, now felt as empty as her heart. Her phone hadn't rung in days. No urgent emails demanded her attention. The silence was deafening after years of constant corporate chaos. But in that quiet, other sounds filled her mind. Lily's infectious giggle during their grocery store adventures, Ethan's warm chuckle as they built school play sets together, the simple joy of reading bedtime stories. Vanessa's fingers traced the edge of a crayon drawing. Lily had given her a stick figure family holding hands under a rainbow. The paper was worn from how often she'd unfolded and refolded it. "What have I become?" she whispered to the empty room. Her reflection in the window showed a woman she barely recognized. Designer clothes and perfect makeup couldn't hide the sadness in her eyes. She walked to her home office, where a wall of achievements mocked her. Awards, certificates, magazine covers all celebrating Vanessa Caldwell, the ruthless CEO. With trembling hands, she took down each frame, stacking them in a box. They felt meaningless now. That evening, she pulled up the website for Lily's school on her laptop. The volunteer section caught her eye. Reading buddies needed for elementary students. Her cursor hovered over the application form. "I can't just walk in there," she muttered. "After everything." But Lily's face floated in her mind, those trusting eyes that had seen past her carefully constructed walls. The next morning, Vanessa dressed differently. Simple slacks, a sweater, minimal makeup. She parked her luxury car 3 blocks from the school and walked, her designer heels replaced with practical flats. Her heart pounded as she approached the front office. The secretary's eyes widened with recognition. "Miss Caldwell?" "Please," Vanessa said softly. "Just Vanessa. I saw you needed reading volunteers." The secretary's surprise turned to confusion, then cautious acceptance. The library could use help organizing after school. Nothing official, just shelving books. Vanessa nodded, swallowing her pride. That would be perfect. For the next week, she worked quietly in the school library. She arranged books, helped young readers sound out difficult words, and cleaned tables without complaint. She made sure to come when Lily wasn't there. This wasn't about being seen. It was about doing something good, simply because it was good. The children didn't know who she was. To them, she was just the nice lady who helped find their favorite stories. Their innocent acceptance touched something deep inside her. One little girl, Emma, reminded her of Lily. When Emma struggled with a word, Vanessa used the same patience she'd learned during those precious bedtime story sessions at Ethan's house. "Sound it out slowly," she encouraged. "You've got this." Emma's face lit up when she finally read the word correctly. "I did it!" "You sure did," Vanessa smiled, feeling a warmth she'd never known in any boardroom victory. News traveled fast in small towns. Mrs. Thompson, who lived next door to Ethan, was picking up her grandson when she spotted Vanessa helping a group of children with their reading. That evening, Mrs. Thompson brought over a casserole to Ethan's house, her usual excuse for sharing gossip. "You'll never believe who I saw at the school today," she said, setting the dish on his counter. Ethan looked up from helping Lily with homework. "Who?" "That CEO lady, Vanessa Caldwell." But here's the strange thing. She was just helping. No cameras, no publicity. She was sitting on the floor with the kids, reading stories. Ethan's pen stopped moving. He stared at Mrs. Thompson, trying to process this information. "Are you sure?" "Clear as day." Mrs. Thompson nodded. "She's been there all week apparently, just volunteering, wearing regular clothes, helping the kids. Never seen anything like it." Lily perked up at the mention of Vanessa's name, but Ethan gently redirected her attention to her homework. After Mrs. Thompson left, Ethan stood at his kitchen window, looking out at the darkening street. The image of Vanessa, the woman who'd once threatened to destroy him, sitting on a library floor reading to children, it didn't fit with everything he thought he knew about her. He remembered her confession of a lonely childhood, how naturally she'd taken to reading to Lily. Maybe there was more to her transformation than he'd allowed himself to believe, but the memory of her betrayal still stung. He closed the curtains, trying to close off his thoughts of her as well. Yet, as he helped Lily get ready for bed that night, He couldn't help but wonder what other changes were happening in the heart of the woman who'd turned their lives upside down. The morning sun filtered through the dusty windows of Parker's Hardware, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floors. Ethan stood at the counter, mechanically sorting through the day's mail. Bills, advertisements, and more bills, the usual reminders of his struggling business. But today, something different caught his eye. A crisp white envelope from First National Bank stood out among the stack. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it, expecting another warning about his overdue mortgage. Instead, the letter inside made him sink onto his old stool, breath catching in his throat. "Dear Mr. Parker," he read aloud to the empty store, "this letter is to inform you that your outstanding mortgage balance has been paid in full." Ethan read the words 3 more times, unable to process their meaning. This had to be a mistake. Just last week, the bank had threatened foreclosure. He reached for the phone with shaking fingers and dialed the number on the letterhead. "First National Bank, how may I help you?" a cheerful voice answered. "Yes, this is Ethan Parker. I just received a letter about my store's mortgage being paid off." He couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. There must be some mistake. "One moment, Mr. Parker." He heard keyboard clicks in the background. "No mistake, sir. The remaining balance was paid in full 3 days ago." "But by whom?" "I apologize, but the benefactor requested anonymity. All I can tell you is that it was a private payment, not from any organization." Ethan thanked her and hung up, his mind racing. Who would do this? Who even had that kind of money? The answer hit him like a physical blow. Vanessa. But why? After everything that happened? After he'd thrown her out of his life? He spent the morning in a daze, barely registering the customers who came and went. By lunch, he couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore. He needed answers. "Mrs. Henderson?" he called to his elderly neighbor who often watched Lily. "Could you keep an eye on the store for an hour? I need to check something at the bank." The local branch manager, Mr. Collins, welcomed Ethan into his office with a knowing smile. "I wondered when you'd come by, Ethan. Please, I need to know who paid off my mortgage." Collins sighed. "You know, I can't reveal that information." Was it Vanessa Caldwell? The slight widening of Collins' eyes told Ethan everything. "I really can't comment." "But why wouldn't she tell me?" Ethan muttered, more to himself than Collins. "What I can say," Collins offered carefully, "is that the person who helped you specified that you were never to know. They wanted no recognition, no gratitude, just for you to keep your store." Ethan left the bank and walked the familiar streets of his town, seeing everything differently. He passed the library where, according to his neighbors, Vanessa had been reading to children, the playground where she'd been helping with maintenance on weekends, the church where she'd been quietly stocking the food pantry, all of it done in silence. No fanfare, no attempt to win him back or prove herself, just quiet service to a community she'd once threatened to destroy. He stopped at the corner where he'd first seen her sleek black car, remembering how she'd swept into his store with her threats and demands. The woman who'd done these things, saved his store, helped his community, asked for nothing in return, she was someone entirely different. Back at the store, Ethan moved through the aisles, touching familiar tools and supplies. Everything here represented his family's legacy, his daughter's future, and Vanessa had saved it all, not as a power play or manipulation, but as an act of pure love. He remembered her last words before he'd thrown her out. "I'm not that person anymore, Ethan, please believe me." He hadn't believed her then. But now, standing in his saved store as evening shadows lengthened across the floor, tears welled in his eyes. The truth was undeniable. Vanessa hadn't just said she'd changed. She'd proved it in the most profound way possible, expecting nothing in return. The realization sat heavy in his chest as he closed up for the night. He judged her by who she was, not who she'd become. The woman who'd threatened to destroy his life had instead saved it, and he hadn't even known. In the quiet of his store, surrounded by the heritage he'd thought he'd lose, Ethan wiped his eyes and faced the truth. He had completely misjudged Vanessa Caldwell. The elementary school auditorium buzzed with pre-show energy. Parents clutched programs and smartphones, while excited whispers echoed through the rows of metal folding chairs. Christmas decorations sparkled everywhere. Paper snowflakes dangled from the ceiling, and tinsel garlands framed the stage. Backstage, Lily Parker bounced on her toes, her angel costume's wings slightly crooked. Her blonde curls poked out from under a tinsel halo that kept slipping to one side. "Miss Vanessa, is it straight now?" she asked, fidgeting with the wire circle above her head. Vanessa knelt beside her, her designer clothes replaced by practical jeans and a warm sweater. Her usually perfect hair was slightly mussed from helping wrangle costume pieces and excited children for the past hour. "Almost perfect?" she said, adjusting the halo with gentle hands. "There, now you're the prettiest angel in the choir." Other parents bustled around them, fixing costumes and calming nervous children. But there was something different in how they treated Vanessa now. Instead of suspicious glances, they offered warm smiles. Mrs. Thompson, who ran the local bakery, even passed her a safety pin when a shepherd's robe needed emergency repairs. "5 minutes, everyone." Mrs. Davis, the music teacher, called out. "Parents, please take your seats." Ethan appeared through the stage door, his work clothes traded for a clean button-down shirt. "There's my angel," he said, his eyes crinkling with pride as he looked at Lily. "Daddy!" Lily ran to hug him, her wings fluttering. "Did you see how Miss Vanessa fixed my halo? And she helped me remember all my lines." Ethan's gaze met Vanessa's over Lily's head. The hostility that had marked their last encounter was gone, replaced by something softer, uncertain. "Thank you," he said quietly. Vanessa just nodded, her throat tight with emotion. She'd spent weeks rebuilding trust, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of kindness. Reading to children at the library, helping with school events, using her business skills to organize fundraisers for the community center. "Places, children." Mrs. Davis clapped her hands. "Parents, out, out." Lily gave her father one last squeeze. "Watch for me in the front row," she whispered excitedly. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart." Ethan kissed her forehead. The auditorium lights dimmed as parents settled into their seats. Ethan found himself sitting just 2 rows behind Vanessa. He watched as she pulled out her phone, ready to record every moment of Lily's performance. The show began with the younger children singing "Away in a Manger," their voices sweet and slightly off-key. Then came the 3rd grade play, with shepherds in bathrobes and kings wearing paper crowns. Finally, it was time for the angel choir. Lily stood in the front row, her face glowing with joy as she sang. Her voice rang out clear and true over the other children. When the song ended, Mrs. Davis stepped forward with a microphone for the children's traditional Christmas wishes. One by one, the students shared their hopes for the holiday. "I wish for a new bike," said Tommy Johnson. "I wish for world peace," declared Sarah Williams, clearly coached by her mother. Then it was Lily's turn. She stepped forward, wings quivering with excitement. "I want to dedicate my song to my family," she said clearly into the microphone. "To my daddy, who works so hard and gives the best hugs." She paused, then added with a bright smile, "And to Miss Vanessa, who makes us both so happy." A warm murmur of approval rippled through the audience. Ethan felt tears prick his eyes as he watched his daughter beam with pride. In front of him, Vanessa's shoulders shook slightly. The rest of the show passed in a blur of carols and readings. When the final notes of Silent Night faded away, the audience erupted in applause. Parents surged forward with flowers and cameras, but Ethan held back, watching as Vanessa helped gather scattered music sheets and costume pieces. Behind the heavy velvet curtain, away from the chaos in the auditorium, Vanessa carefully folded Lily's wings. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed the white fabric. "You didn't have to do all this," Ethan said quietly, stepping into the shadows beside her. Vanessa turned, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Yes, I did. I needed to show you, to show everyone, that I could be more than that cold corporate person who threatened you." "I know about the store," Ethan said, "about how you saved it." "I didn't do it to buy your forgiveness," Vanessa whispered. "I did it because—" she struggled to find the words. "Because that store isn't just a business. It's Lily's second home. It's where she draws pictures behind the counter and helps you stack penny nails. It's where you keep living out your wife's memory while building a future for your daughter." Ethan stepped closer, his voice rough with emotion. "The woman who first walked into my store would never have understood that." "She wouldn't have," Vanessa agreed. "But your daughter taught me to see with my heart instead of a balance sheet. And you." She took a shaky breath. "You showed me what real strength looks like. Not power or control, but faith and forgiveness." Without warning, Ethan pulled her into a tight hug. Vanessa stiffened for a moment, then melted into his embrace, her tears finally spilling over. They stood there in the shadow of the curtain, holding each other as the sounds of the dispersing audience faded away. "Daddy, Miss Vanessa!" Lily's voice called from somewhere in the auditorium. "Where are you? Did you see me sing?" They separated slowly, both wiping their eyes. Vanessa smoothed her sweater while Ethan cleared his throat. Their eyes met one last time, full of unspoken words and new possibilities. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of May's Corner Diner, casting warm rectangles across the checkered floor. The bell above the door chimed as Ethan stepped inside, his heart thumping against his ribs. A few early customers looked up from their coffee cups, then quickly looked away, pretending not to notice. The familiar smell of coffee and fresh-baked pie filled the air, but Ethan barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on Vanessa, who sat alone in a corner booth. She wore a simple sweater instead of her usual business attire, and her hands were wrapped around a steaming mug. When she saw him, her shoulders tensed slightly. "Good morning," Ethan said softly, sliding into the seat across from her. "Good morning." Vanessa's voice was quiet, missing its old commanding edge. Her fingers fidgeted with the handle of her coffee cup. May, the elderly owner, approached their table with practiced casualness. "Coffee, Ethan? Please." He nodded, grateful for the moment to collect his thoughts. As May poured his coffee, Ethan could feel the weight of hidden glances from other customers. Through the window, he spotted Mrs. Henderson from the flower shop slowing her pace as she walked past, trying to peek inside. The whole town was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen between the hardware store owner and the former CEO. After May left, silence stretched between them. The clink of spoons and murmur of conversation from other tables seemed far away. "Thank you for coming," Ethan finally said, adding cream to his coffee. "I know it couldn't have been easy." Vanessa met his eyes briefly before looking down at her hands. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me again." "I wasn't sure either," he admitted. "But after what you did for the store." He paused, stirring his coffee slowly. "Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want you to think I was trying to buy your forgiveness." Her voice cracked slightly. "The store is your life's work, Ethan. Your father's legacy. I couldn't bear to see it taken away, especially knowing I'd played a part in threatening it in the first place." Ethan watched her carefully. The morning light softened her features, making her look younger, more vulnerable. Gone was the intimidating CEO who had stormed into his store months ago. In her place sat a woman who had lost everything but gained something far more valuable. "You've changed," he said quietly. "I had to." Vanessa's eyes glistened. "Meeting you and Lily, it showed me everything that was missing in my life. All those years climbing the corporate ladder, I thought power and success would fill the emptiness inside me. But it was love I was missing. Family. Community." A waitress refilled their coffee cups, and they both waited until she walked away. "I was so angry when I found out about your original intentions," Ethan continued, his voice low but steady. "It felt like everything between us had been a lie." "It started as a lie," Vanessa acknowledged, pain evident in her expression. "But somewhere along the way, it became the truest thing I've ever known. Those bedtime stories with Lily, the school plays, the festival." She took a shaky breath. "I fell in love with both of you, Ethan. That was never part of my plan." Outside, a group of schoolchildren walked past, their backpacks bouncing. Ethan thought of Lily, who was probably sitting in her classroom right now, drawing pictures of their little family as she imagined it could be. "When you left," he said, "Lily cried herself to sleep for days. She asked me why adults always go away." He saw Vanessa flinch at his words. "But then something remarkable happened. The librarian told me you've been reading to the children every Tuesday. The school principal mentioned how you've been helping with their fundraiser. You didn't just disappear." "I couldn't," Vanessa whispered. "Even if you never wanted to see me again, I needed to prove to myself more than anyone that I could be the person Lily believed I was, the person you helped me become." Ethan felt something shift in his chest, like a key turning in a lock. The hurt was still there, but alongside it grew something stronger. Admiration for her courage to change, to humble herself, to choose love over power. "It takes real strength to admit when you're wrong," he said, "to give up everything you thought you wanted for something better." "I was terrified," she confessed. "I still am. I don't know how to be part of a family. I never had a real one of my own. But I want to learn, Ethan. More than anything, I want to love you and Lily the way you both deserve to be loved." May appeared with 2 slices of apple pie, setting them down with a motherly smile. "On the house," she said warmly before shuffling away. Vanessa stared at the pie, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I don't deserve any of this kindness." "Maybe that's exactly why you deserve it," Ethan replied. He reached across the table, hesitating for just a moment before covering her hand with his own. Her fingers were warm from holding the coffee cup, and they trembled slightly under his touch. When their eyes met, he saw all the walls had crumbled. There was no more pretense, no more strategic moves or careful calculations. Just a woman who had found her heart in the most unexpected place. For the first time since that day she'd walked into a store, everything felt right. The morning sun painted golden highlights in her hair, and her eyes held a gentle warmth that had nothing to do with power or control. His hand tightened around hers, and she squeezed back, a smile breaking through her tears. Around them, the diner continued its morning routine. Coffee cups clinked, bacon sizzled on the grill, and the bell chimed as customers came and went. But in their corner booth, Ethan and Vanessa held onto each other's hands, beginning something real at last. Snow drifted lazily past the hardware store's windows as Ethan balanced precariously on a ladder, stringing twinkling lights across the front display. The morning sun caught the crystalline flakes, making them sparkle like tiny diamonds against the aged brick facade. "Daddy, a little higher on the left," Lily called out from below, her mittened hands cupped around her mouth. She wore her favorite red winter coat, her cheeks pink from the cold and excitement. "Like this, sweetheart?" Ethan adjusted the strand of lights, his breath visible in the crisp December air. "Perfect," Lily clapped, then turned as the store's bell chimed. "Miss Vanessa!" Vanessa stepped through the door, carrying 3 steaming paper cups and a box of Christmas decorations. Gone were her sharp business suits and intimidating heels. Instead, she wore a soft cream sweater, jeans, and warm boots. Her long dark hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail, and her smile was genuine and warm. "Hot chocolate for my favorite decorator," she said, handing Lily a cup topped with whipped cream. "And coffee for the man on the ladder." "You're a lifesaver," Ethan grinned, carefully climbing down. Their fingers brushed as he took the cup, and neither pulled away too quickly. The touch was comfortable now, natural. Mrs. Henderson from the bakery next door poked her head in, carrying a plate of fresh cookies. "Room for one more helper?" "Always!" Lily exclaimed, rushing to open the door wider. Soon, other townspeople began trickling in. Tom from the barber shop brought extra ornaments. Sarah from the flower shop arrived with fresh pine garlands. Even old Mr. Jenkins, who'd initially been Vanessa's harshest critic, showed up with his toolbox to help secure decoration. "Remember when you first walked in here?" Ethan murmured to Vanessa as they watched Lily direct their neighbors in hanging ornaments. "All business and threats?" Vanessa's cheeks colored. "I was so lost then," she admitted softly. "I thought power meant happiness. I had no idea real joy looked like this." She gestured to the scene before them, Lily giggling as Mr. Jenkins lifted her to place a star on a small tree, Mrs. Henderson sharing stories about Christmas traditions, the whole community working together. "Well," Ethan said, taking her hand, "I think it's time we made it official, don't you?" Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. She squeezed his hand and nodded. Ethan cleared his throat. "Everyone?" The bustling activity paused as their neighbors turned to look. "Vanessa and I have something to share." Lily bounced on her toes, somehow sensing the importance of the moment. "Some of you know how our story started," Ethan continued, his voice steady and sincere. "It wasn't exactly a fairy tale beginning." A few knowing chuckles rippled through the crowd. "But sometimes," Vanessa added, her voice full of emotion, "the most beautiful things grow from unexpected places. What began as, well, as a business arrangement," she smiled apologetically at the gathered faces, "has become something real and precious." "We're together now," Ethan announced, pulling Vanessa closer. "Not for show, not for business, just for love." The store erupted in applause. Mrs. Henderson wiped tears from her eyes with her apron. Mr. Jenkins humped gruffly, but his eyes twinkled. And Lily launched herself at both of them, wrapping her arms around their waists. "Finally!" she exclaimed, making everyone laugh. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of celebration. The community's response was overwhelming, not just acceptance, but genuine joy. Mrs. Henderson insisted on planning a proper party. Sarah started discussing flower arrangements. The transformation was complete, from outsider to beloved neighbor, from adversary to partner, from pretense to truth. As the winter day drew to a close, the last of their helpers headed home, leaving the store glowing with Christmas lights and warmth. Ornaments sparkled on the small tree, garlands draped elegantly across shelves, and paper snowflakes, Lily's creative contribution, danced from the ceiling. "Time to head home, sweetheart," Ethan called to Lily, who was admiring their handiwork. "Can Miss Vanessa come?" Lily asked, though she already knew the answer. "Of course," Vanessa smiled, helping Lily into her coat. They stepped out into the gentle snowfall, Ethan locking the store behind them. The street looked magical, every shop decorated for Christmas, lampposts wrapped in lights, fresh snow coating everything in pristine white. Lily skipped between them, catching snowflakes on her tongue. Without hesitation, she reached for both their hands. Vanessa and Ethan exchanged a look over her head, one full of wonder, gratitude, and love. As they walked through the falling snow, Lily's joy was infectious. Her laughter echoed down the quiet street as she swung their joined hands, her face glowing with pure happiness. This was no longer a pretend family, no longer a business arrangement, but something real and precious, just as they'd promised. The hardware store's lights twinkled behind them, a beacon of where their unlikely story had begun, while ahead, snow continued to fall softly on their path home. Together, the warm glow of Christmas lights twinkled through the frost-touched windows of Ethan's cozy living room. The fireplace crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls as savory aromas of pot roast and fresh-baked rolls filled the air. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor near the modest Christmas tree, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Vanessa helped Ethan carry the last of their simple dinner to the coffee table. She'd insisted on eating by the fireplace tonight to make it extra special. Her designer clothes were long gone, replaced by a comfortable sweater and jeans. The transformation wasn't just in her wardrobe. Her entire being radiated a gentle warmth that had nothing to do with her former power suits and commanding presence. "This is perfect," Lily declared, carefully arranging her napkin on her lap just like Vanessa had taught her. "Way better than fancy restaurants." Ethan caught Vanessa's eye and smiled. She'd come so far from the woman who once only ate at five-star establishments. Now, here she was, contentedly settling onto the floor beside Lily, not minding the casual setting one bit. They said grace together, Lily's small voice leading them in thanksgiving. As they shared their meal, stories and laughter flowed naturally between them. Vanessa told funny tales about learning to use the cash register at the store, while Lily giggled about her teacher's reaction to Vanessa volunteering to help with art class. After dinner, Lily could hardly contain herself. "Can we do presents now, please?" Ethan glanced at the clock. "Well, it is Christmas Eve. I suppose we could open one each tonight." Lily scrambled to the tree, returning with 3 carefully wrapped packages. She'd insisted on wrapping them herself, evident in the slightly crumpled paper and excessive tape. "This one's for you, Daddy," she said, handing him a lumpy package. "And this is for you," she added, giving Vanessa a flat envelope decorated with glitter and stickers. Vanessa held the envelope carefully, as if it were made of glass. "Should we all open together?" Lily nodded eagerly, clutching her own package. 1, 2, 3. Ethan counted down. The sound of tearing paper filled the room. Ethan unveiled a hand-painted coffee mug with "World's Best Dad" written in wobbly letters. Lily discovered a new set of art supplies, exactly what she'd been hoping for. But it was Vanessa's reaction that stilled the room. She opened the envelope with trembling fingers, pulling out a handmade card covered in hearts and flowers. As she read the words inside, tears began rolling down her cheeks. "To Mom," she whispered, her voice catching. "I know you weren't my first mom, but you're the mom in my heart now." Lily moved closer, wrapping her arms around Vanessa's neck. "Do you like it? Is it okay that I called you Mom?" Vanessa pulled Lily tight against her, tears flowing freely now. "Oh, sweetheart, it's more than okay. It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received." Ethan watched them, his own eyes growing misty. The sight of them together, his daughter, and the woman who'd started as his adversary but had become so much more, made his heart feel full to bursting. When Vanessa finally looked up at him, her face tear-stained but radiant with joy, he knew it was time. He moved closer, taking both their hands in his. "I never thought I'd find love again," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "After losing Sarah, I was so focused on just getting through each day, on being there for Lily, I'd convinced myself that was enough." He squeezed Vanessa's hand. "But God had other plans. He brought you into our lives in the most unexpected way, and even when things seemed impossible, He was working to bring us together." Vanessa leaned against his shoulder, her free hand still holding Lily close. "I spent my whole life chasing success, power, control," she whispered. "I had everything I thought I wanted, but I was so empty inside." She looked around the modest living room, at the simple decorations and well-worn furniture. "This, right here. This is what I was really looking for. I'm finally home." Lily wiggled happily between them. "Can we go see the lights now, please?" Ethan chuckled, wiping his eyes. "Sure, princess. Bundle up, though. It's snowing." They helped Lily into her winter coat and mittens, then pulled on their own warm clothes. Stepping out onto the porch, they were greeted by a magical scene. Fresh snow blanketed the ground, and Christmas lights twinkled all along the street, creating halos in the gently falling flakes. Lily immediately bounded down the steps, her boots crunching in the pristine snow. "Come on," she called back to them, her voice full of excitement. Ethan and Vanessa followed hand in hand, their breaths creating soft clouds in the cold air. Above them, stars peeked through breaks in the clouds, adding their light to the festive scene. As they walked down the peaceful street, Lily skipped ahead, her clear voice rising in an enthusiastic rendition of Jingle Bells. Ethan smiled, offering up a silent prayer of gratitude. "Thank you, Lord," he whispered, watching his daughter's joyful dance through the snow. "Thank you for second chances, for showing us that love can grow in the most unexpected places, for bringing healing to our hearts and making us a family." Lily twirled under a strand of twinkling lights, her face glowing with pure happiness as she launched into silent night. The sacred melody floated through the peaceful evening, a perfect accompaniment to their quiet joy. Vanessa squeezed his hand, and Ethan knew she was thinking the same thing. This was what Christmas miracles were made of. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but the simple, profound blessing of hearts finding their way home to each other. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Ethan Parker, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.